Rich Rodriguez has said it multiple times this year. West Virginia football can win a national championship, but I've got somebody in the chat that may not agree. Let's talk about it right now.
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is up? Welcome back in, guys. My name is Mountaineer Paul. I am your host. Welcome back into Locked On West Virginia, baby. We're talking West Virginia football again today, and excited to do so. But before we get there, let's acknowledge the channel sponsor in FanDuel. And did you know right now on FanDuel, you can win $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins, but you can't win if you don't play. So make sure you head to FanDuel.com to get started today, guys. I've got somebody cool on the show today, somebody that loves tape, and you guys know that makes him a kindred spirit with me. Somebody that knows what he's talking about when it comes to talking about tape. Sometimes that can be a rarity. And here he is today, guys. We're talking about Brian Smith from Locked On Portal, man. What is up?
How you doing, sir?
Good, man. So you reached out to me, and I meant to reach out to you. I got it from Jacob Goins, the Locked On Hoosiers guy. Got your number, and I had been in my mind. I'd meant to reach out to you for a couple of days, and then fate intervened, and you contacted me today, which was great, to talk about something that you had seen on a podcast with Rich Rod. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, the podcast that Urban Meyer's on. Of course, He does the Fox Big Noon Kickoff show, and he's one of their big guys, and he's a famous personality. He's close friends with Rich Rod. They used to go see each other every year because they ran similar schemes, and they just traded info. And when Rich Rod was on the podcast, he said that we can win a national title at West Virginia. He was just rambling on it. Like, he just kind of threw it out there in the middle. I'm like, well, that's random. And he didn't expand on it. Just kind of just let it sit there. And my first thought is, how are you going to win a national title there? There's not enough in-state talent to get it. I'm a recruiting guy. That's what I do 24/7 every day, cover recruiting. There's not enough in-state talent for me to buy that. Then I thought about it a little bit, and I'm like, well, with the portal changes things some, right. And he actually understands what it looks like. He's coached at West Virginia, at Michigan, Tulane. He's been all over the place, and he's done a great job of recruiting down south over the years. Maybe he knows something, but my big thing is if you're going to win it at West Virginia, you've got to change the O-line, especially D-line recruiting. They're not recruiting at a high enough level. Based on the info over the last 25 years, it's pretty straightforward. The guys in the top 8 to 10, they're the ones that compete for titles. But with Rich Rod's offense, it's so unique in how he recruits. Like, they'll get kids from Florida. They'll get kids from Alabama. They'll get kids from Georgia that other schools don't. He's a pretty good recruiter. And him being at Jack State gives him a little bit of chance. But, again, I need to see the proof in the pudding with the O-line, D-line, like the elite kids, before I'm buying that full on. I hope I'm wrong. But college football is very, very small group that usually compete for that title. I'm just curious to see how close they can come and what he's going to do to try to get over the hump.
Yeah, so I agree with you in some respects there. Absolutely, I agree about the offensive and defensive line. You can't argue with that. Some would say Neil Brown had his best offensive lines maybe in the history of the school the last few years with the guys we had with Zach Frazier, Wyatt Milam, Doug Nestor, ton of NFL talent. Couldn't go anywhere with it because he couldn't coach, unfortunately. and so with Rich Rod, you have to be able to coach, and thankfully we know he can do that. Nobody questions his acumen, Brian. Now, the way he recruits is different, right? He does like to get what Bob Huggins would call those guys that like to eat cheese sandwiches. He's happy to be here because I've been in JUCO for 2 years or wherever. So I think with Rich Rod, the one thing I'll point out at what, he does things differently. He took Pat White, who everybody wanted to play safety, and said, no, he's a quarterback. Steve Slayton, who Maryland wanted to play defensive back, and said, you're going to be a running back. Owen Schmidt, who was a Division 2 or 3 player at the time, and said, no, you're going to play fullback in this offense. And a guy like Doug Nestor, Jeremy Sheppy, who was playing on the defensive line, and said, you're going to be a guard. You have to do it different if you're at West Virginia in a lot of respects. And one thing I do respect about Rich Rodriguez is he can fill holes differently than other guys can, because at West Virginia, like you said, not a ton of in-state talent. Now, it's gotten better over the last 10 years for sure. Like, we'll at least have 3 or 4 legitimate Power 4 guys a year, if not maybe 10. I don't know, something like that. And then a few guys that ended up being that good that we just never would have saw coming. But absolutely, you have to recruit regionally, obviously, down in Florida. And you've got a few pipelines built that are just natural to West Virginia. Miramar was good for a while, as you know, and different places. But I think the number one case I would give you just first is he's been close before at West Virginia, very close, obviously. 28.5 point favorites against Pitt away. And we all know what happened there in the 13-9 loss that is now legendary and lives in infamy. So I think that's my first point, Brian. What do you say there?
I think that you're onto something. It's just that in today's era, it's so weird trying to feel, especially with the house settlement. Like I've been deep diving into that, talking to lawyers and all that. And I know West Virginia, their fan base gets behind the ears. That's not in question.
Right.
I've been to a game there. I know what it's like, but they need to be ready for anything because I don't trust Congress with any of this.
No.
But they're going to need their NIL to get over the hump with Florida kids, etc., because it's not an easy place to get to. And a lot of these kids, they couldn't point West Virginia out on a map. And I mean that in a literal sense. Down south, the kids live in very small bubbles. And that's where Rich Rod's going to try to recruit a lot. Now, they just had a nice little run with some recruits just kind of going through their list for the class of 26. And like I was talking to you, they got a kid from Moody High School just outside of Birmingham I like. They got a kid from Montgomery. I live in Alabama. If you can get the Alabama kids, that's Pat White from Alabama. If you can get some of the Alabama kids, that's a great start. And he's got the quarterback from Florida. Like, fits his offense to a T. Now, that may not be the kid for UF, but like you said, they recruit a little different. And it doesn't make any difference. So the star rankings for the way Rich Rod recruits at the skill spots, I don't put a lot of stock in it. But linemen are linemen. I still need to see him take that next step up. I think that he will take some JUCOs and rely on the portal more. Because of the portal, he's got a better shot now than he did the first time around, in my opinion, because it was just straight recruiting then. What they did then was incredible because they didn't get 5-star talent then. They got a lot of 3- and 4-star guys, but they weren't getting the kid that Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Florida State wanted. But they still won. So that's a credit to that staff back then. And I'm sure that he's probably got some of the same principles of what he's looking for now, but he's a more wise coach because he's been around. I'm excited, to be honest, to see Rich Rod back at the Power 4 level, and it's cool. It would be good, in my opinion, for college football if West Virginia was, quote-unquote, more viable, meaning they were a contender. I don't know. I have no idea what to expect this year, but like year 2, year 3, year 4, they should be better. Like this year, whatever you get is what you get because you're flipping the roster, new offenses and all that. I'm sure West Virginia fans are excited, but be realistic too. They should go to a bowl game, and after that, I have no idea. I mean, 10 times better than I do, but year 2, I think West Virginia will start to make some moves.
Looking at the offensive and defensive line, I'll just go. It's on the active roster for now, leaving recruiting out of this for now. If you look at what they did in the portal, they went and got Kimo Makaniole, who was at LSU, converted to a defensive lineman. They for whatever reason wasn't working there at offensive line. And they bring him back in here, and apparently he had one of the best springs at offensive line of anybody. Whether that's bad or good, up to interpretation. Me and I talk about Tykees Crawford off the show there for a second. Got a ton of ability, was a 4-star kid. Just need to see a couple other things from him. Carson Lee played 1,100 snaps at Eastern Michigan, ran with the ones all spring long at Mississippi State, and decided he wanted something else, and he moved. And then you've got a mixture of guys on the offensive line from the SEC. Like you look at a guy like Malik Abgo, who was from Texas. He was their 6th offensive lineman last year, and a few other guys. I'll tell you what, in my opinion, Aiden Bustle is the name nobody knows about. I've watched a ton of his tape. He was absolutely dominating the ones in practice at Tennessee. No idea why that didn't work out. I think Tennessee is just one of those programs that, they've got this 3-star kid that they've developed, but they can just buy a really good player out of the portal that they think is a little better. And I think we inherited a kid there that nobody knows about yet that I predict will be very, very good for West Virginia. So be watching for that name. And then on the defensive line, you and I talked about Jamory Robinson, who was the conference player of the year in the American last year, and just an elite pass rusher off the edge, Brian.
Well, if you've added those pieces, now is the question that every coach fears but knows he has to figure out and conquer. How do all those pieces fit together on a new team?
Yeah.
And we
really
don't know
hard.
until they play.
No, we won't know. So,
but you're better to have them than not, though. They
got
more
better to have them
than
not. I think it's, if we're talking national championship, though, this isn't enough. Not this year. Now could we be Arizona State this year? I would not put it past Rich Rodriguez in year one to do something like that. I wouldn't, but my gut isn't saying that. The schedule doesn't really line up right. The last 3 or 4 games are brutal. You've got games in Provo. You've got games against Arizona State down the stretch that make this a really tough task. And those are both going to be really good football teams this year and very good on the offensive and defensive lines, both teams. So, I think that Rich Rod has the coaching ability, the acumen, everything you ask to be good in year one, but national championship, definitely not. Now, in his tenure, because of Ken Kendrick and Pat McAfee and the backing that he has from obviously Kendrick owns the Diamondbacks, is our biggest donor as a billionaire, helps a lot, right? And especially Pat McAfee in the public arena. But I still don't know if that pushes us over the edge to national championship. I do think Big 12 contender every other year or every 2 years, absolutely. I will buy that right now. If you ask me to put it down on the table, I would.
I love that point because it's something I was going to ask you. I've had this conversation with Drake Toll, who runs Locked On Big 12, Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On College Football, and different guys that run different sites in the Big 12. That league is annoying in general most years, but especially this year.
Why?
We're talking about a scenario, what is it, 12, 13 quarterbacks that have starting experience, whether they transfer to, it's insane. So this year is going to be a mess. I'm not a gambling guy, but I wouldn't touch Big 12 games with a 10-foot pole this year. And that's the Big 12 in general. But this year, it's going to be really hard. So my first question for you when looking at the Nears, do you feel good with the quarterback depth chart as it sits today?
We'll get there right after the break, guys. We're at around 12, Brian. So let me hit this thing really quick. That's a great question for right after the break. We'll be right back here on a Locked On West Virginia and Locked On Portal crossover. And this episode of Locked On West Virginia is going to be brought to you by FanDuel, guys. Guys, did you know with FanDuel, they're doing it big right now? The NBA playoffs are in full swing. Every night's going to deliver, and you got highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. And whether it's a game-winning shot, a breakout player, or what have you, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel does make it easy than most. And if you want to stay in the game before tip, live, whenever, you got player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. You've literally got more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And listen, if you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with the same game parlay? Because everybody needs $200 in bonus bets. Am I right? If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. You can head over to FanDuel.com, place that first $5 bet, and if it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. It's that simple. Make every moment more today, not yesterday, not tomorrow, today with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. It's segment 2. Let's crack a do with Brian Smith, man, over on the Locked On Portal podcast / YouTube show, man. What do you got going on over there right now?
What do I not have going on right now? Because trying to think about it, 65, 68, I forget what the number is, of Power 4 teams. The next 2 to 3 weeks is by far the heaviest point of the year for recruiting. Yeah. Between now and about July 10th, there will be roughly 400 kids that commit in the Power 4, 300 minimum. So I cover recruiting nationally. So it's a little overwhelming.
I would imagine.
Big commitment tonight with the kid from Texas. It's going to go to Kansas, Michigan, or Notre Dame. And it's just that way every few hours. So it's a lot of information, a lot of phone calls, a lot of text messages. West Virginia's in that too. Like it's just a little bit of everything. So it's wild, man.
So do you have to be pick and choosy with what shows you do? Like, I mean, do you have to gauge on which audience is biggest for this specific recruit, or how does that work for you, like as a content creator?
It does to a certain degree. Like certain fan bases are just bananas. Texas, Notre Dame, Ohio State, those are just locked. Georgia, Bama. Yeah, you could say head coach mows lawn and people will watch.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, there's certain fan base. They're a little different. You know what I mean? But it also depends on where the kid's from, the high school, position, like quarterback recruiting.
State, I guess, too.
The market. Yeah, sure. So
okay. Well, to answer your question, you'd asked before the break about the quarterback depth chart, and it's an interesting room this year. Obviously, Nico Marchiol, you've covered recruiting, you probably know that name. Arizona Gatorade Player of the Year, has sat behind Garrett Green and others. A lot of people felt like Neil Brown made a mistake in not playing him sooner. He is undefeated as a starter. He has a lot of ability. A lot of people believe he'll be good in Rich Rod's offense because he is a dual threat player. More along the lines of what he had last year in Huff, one of the like a 4'6", 4'7" guy, maybe like a Tim Tebow-esque, if you will, like a lefty that can run with power, has got some speed, but is more of a power guy that's going to get you 15, that's going to make it really hard on you over the course of 70 snaps or whatever. Or Jalen Henderson, a kid that I interviewed the kid. I asked him myself, because Jimbo Fisher went and got him out of Fresno. He had barely ever played a snap for Fresno, and he somehow transfers up to Texas A&M because he was behind the kid that plays for the Saints now, right? And so how does that work? How do you not play and still transfer up to a place like A&M unless you're really good? And that was the word, was he was really good. And then when he finally got to play at A&M, he proved why he was really good. Unfortunately, he got that, it's called a humerus fracture on his arm there, and it kept him out. And I'm a big believer of his. Honest, he's one of more of what he's had in the past, a true dual threat player. And then there are some freshmen in the room I think that I'm really excited about too. Max Brown's a name that was at Florida as well, by the way. I forgot to mention him, but he was at Charlotte, but he's had major interception problems, and arm talent's there. Interceptions, I don't know. And then you get to guys like Scotty Fox and Max Anderson, who I really like as freshman quarterbacks, but I wouldn't imagine would play into the race this year. But yeah, it's definitely a two-horse race, I think, Brian, between Nico and Jalen. And I don't think anybody in the fan base could tell you which way that's leaning right now.
Well, my guess is Rich Rod will give both a chance in fall camp, and my guess is also that one or both will play early in the season.
Right.
The pit game or whatever will dictate who ends up being the guy. But
probably a good guess.
It's in his offense, so much of it is predicated on the player at the quarterback position making decisions in the moment. That's not a Rich Rod thing. That's, you're a great athlete. I've given you the chance with all the people around you. You just got to make smart decisions. But they can't figure that out just in practice, because you can't have your quarterbacks getting hit in practice. It's just not the same.
Right.
So that's the frustrating part about quarterback battles. Like you can't have them get hit, because when one goes down, then your options are over. So it's interesting. But Pittsburgh, like, they play them again this year early on, I assume. I haven't looked at the schedule, but
week 3, which is silly, should be in rivalry week with everybody else's game.
Yeah, but Pittsburgh's going to have a real defense. They've got some athletic guys, and they're aggressive. They're well coached. So the quarterbacks will be challenged. And to help them out, I'm just going to ask you, you said a few minutes ago before we went to break that West Virginia's had a really good O-line the last few years, and that's fact. Where would you rank this O-line in terms of like where you think it could be to where it is right now? Like, is it going to be a lot of growing pains? Like week 7 is going to be totally different than week 1? What do you expect?
I think there's going to be some growing pains. Absolutely. Now, could we be getting some problems fixed by week 3 in Pittsburgh? I think so, because fortunately, Rich Rod's offense from an O-line perspective is fairly easy to run. There are some things that could happen, Brian, that could make this go a lot smoother. Number one, Landon Livingston, who is the incumbent at center, if somehow he's able to keep that job and fight off a couple guys, that helps a lot, because he's been here. He's been at West Virginia a long time, and it would just be an easier transition for a guy that's played at West Virginia, been with Rich Rod since he got here, not just transferring in. Nick Cray is also in that same situation at left tackle. If you're looking at the rest of the offensive line, obviously you can't forget about Xavier Bosley, who was a freshman All-American with Rich Rod at Jacksonville State. But here's the thing. He literally, I think we went out and got it. I think, what was it, 14, maybe 16 offensive linemen in the portal. If you've got 3 guys that you can count on, that you pretty sure you can count on, you get 16 guys, and this is the thing. Most of those guys were added after the spring period, after they'd evaluated some. That tells me a story. That tells me that he wasn't happy with what he saw in the spring, or they didn't have enough bodies and they just wanted to. But the thing is, they didn't just bring in bodies. They brought in starter caliber players. So, you're bringing in Ogbo, who was the 6th offensive lineman at Texas, who was a playoff team last year. That's not a bad football player, right? This is a kid who's a 4-star player. Tykees Crawford is a 4-star player that started at Arkansas. You're not bringing him in to sit on the bench. So I think that there's a lot of potential here for that offensive line. But at the same time, I think it would be better off if some of these kids that were already here would perform, like especially Bosley, who I had penciled in as an All-American at West Virginia based on his Jack State stuff. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if he was injured during the spring, and he and I had been close in the past at points, and he's kind of kept that tight to the vest, which is all in him to do that. So I don't have a ton of answers for it. But if he works out, it helps a lot of things, Brian.
No, that's the guy that sets the line calls. And it's good to have a veteran voice that knows that locker room, that knows that city, that knows that institution. Your center is such an important part of your offense and sometimes of your cap. Like if you could have a center that's a senior like him, that's a captain or something, or at least like a leader. I don't know if he'll make the captain. That's a big deal. That'll help. Now, the other question I have with that offensive line, you mentioned all the talent, and this is where the chess comes in. I don't know who their O-line coach is or any of that. It doesn't matter. Which guys play where and why. O-line is 5 guys trying to play as one. I've been around a million O-line coaches, and it's basically that phrase is what I don't care if you run zone, man, or both. If you are not ready to help your brother to each side with little things, if you're disgruntled, you're not playing left tackle and you're playing left guard, that stuff will get you wrecked real quick in Power 4 football. You'll be down 31-10 real fast.
Yeah.
So that's the stuff you just don't know that you were just talking about. And it's why, in my opinion, college football is the greatest sport on earth, because there's so much unique uncertainty. It's
so
fun.
many unique pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just really, really hard, because even by the old standard, it's 85 scholarships. It's going up now. We can talk about that on another pod. For like, how many will West Virginia actually use on scholarships and all that? Yeah, that's
a lot of tricky bookmaking happening. You know that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because it costs, I think, $30,000 less to just sign a kid to play at West Virginia than it does to give him a scholarship, right? So, a lot of times it's like, hey, would you mind coming off the books? We're going to pay you. It's going to save us money, like that kind of thing. And I think it's happening everywhere. People are trying to figure out how to make the most bang for their buck. You're better off not being scholarship. Are you okay with that? That's one of those things that people don't like you to talk about exactly, but I don't mind talking about it. I think it's happening. Why not talk about it?
Yeah, well, that's part of college football. It's
been a part of it, right? It's just the way it is. We'll go to one more quick break, guys. 6 seconds. We'll be right back. We'll keep talking about these Mountaineers. It's going to be fun. Stick around, guys. It's Locked On West Virginia and the Locked On Portal crossover. All right, back with Brian Smith at the Locked On Portal podcast, and does an excellent job covering recruiting 24/7 over there. Appreciate you for coming on, man. This has been really fun. I think we were just talking about offensive and defensive line. Another thing that I think we hadn't talked about yet, obviously, where would you rank Rick Trickett as an offensive line coach all time? He's got to be up there, right?
Well, I mean, Joe Moore is the gold standard, but there's a million guys that have been good.
Guys like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's like who I don't remember the guy's name, but whoever was the O-line coach at Ohio State in the 70s. I mean, stuff like that the O-line coach at SC and there were some easy ones.
Oklahoma, yeah, Nebraska,
stuff like that.
yeah.
But like the thing about Trickett is he was the guy that helped be the innovator with what Rich Rod did. It's one thing to block somebody, but I remember when they transitioned from West Virginia to Michigan, Michigan was always plotters, but just straight ahead power. Like they had to completely change it. But in like by year 2, they were just running crazy around people and nobody knew how to handle it. And even when he was at West Virginia, he'd been there a few years, people didn't adjust. They got a little bit smaller, went super athletic, and just found a way to run outside. So like they knew what they were going to do. The other team knew what they were going to do, and they just out executed them. They got the kids to believe that no matter what their star ranking, they took a lot of kids that were 3 stars, kind of like Rich Rod is now.
Yep.
And by redshirt sophomore year, you're like, this kid might be 3 and out. We may only get him really for 2 years because we redshirted.
Yeah.
Because they were really good.
Right.
So Trickett was a part of that. I think he's better in an offensive fit like this that's up tempo and all that. It's just his groove. I don't know how you rank him all time, but like what he's done before and now he's with Rich Rod again. I'm kind of excited about it, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask you is actually he didn't come.
Oh, he didn't come.
No, it's the first time they've been apart in forever. Bicknell, Jack Bicknell is a big name guy who's coached a ton of ball and NFL everywhere you could name. And he was at Ole Miss with Rich Rod when Matt Corral was there in 19. And we all know Matt Corral ran for like 1 million yards that year. I think he had a 300-yard game against Alabama. So that's so that gives fans a lot of hope that Bicknell can replicate some of what they did there at Ole Miss there in 19 because Kippen needed an OC. Rich Rod came in for a year, and then he was gone off to Monroe and a couple other places at OC before he went into and brought Zach Alley with him to Jack State, which is another point I wanted to make is Rich Rodriguez has never had a good defensive coordinator as he has right now with Zach Alley, who is Brent Venables' protege. Obviously been with Venables, was with Venables at Clemson. Then obviously after, I think it was before Rich Rod brought him over, but obviously he was with him at Jack State. Oklahoma hired him away. West Virginia paid $2 million for a defensive coordinator. That's one of the other things I wanted to say is Rich Rodriguez is, at West Virginia circa 2007, not getting $2 million for a DC. He couldn't even get $30,000 to give his coaches a pay raise. The buy-in is, Rich Rodriguez was given full reign to hire whoever he wanted. It's the biggest staff he's ever had. It's the best quality of coaching staff he's ever had. And to get a sitting SEC defensive coordinator that was successful at Oklahoma on defense, they went up 20 spots in almost every category last year. They didn't want to lose him. They outbid Oklahoma for him because Rich Rod, it was like almost a non-negotiable to bring a Zach Alley in. So I think, that's a very underrated part of this. Do you know anything about Alley from him, anything from him in the past?
Well, if he's coached with Venables, that's all I really need to know because that guy saves plays for big games as well as any coach that I've seen. He's one of the very few guys that's eaten Saban's lunch. Like that 2018, like they didn't beat Alabama. They boat raced them. That's one of like 1 or 2 games that Alabama got boat raced when Saban was there. That's the defense coordinator, and he's the protege of that guy. So I'm curious to see what he can do with West Virginia. Like I know one of the kids, it's a freshman coming in, and he said that it's going to be a lot of fun how they're playing and everything. I spoke to him not all that long ago. Wilderson Telemack, I know him. He's a South Florida kid, and he's excited about it. So we'll see.
Out of Wisconsin, I think. State of Wisconsin.
No, he's South Florida.
Florida
he was
kid.
committed to Wisconsin. That he flipped.
That's what it was. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, he's from Miami, but he's a kid that is ready to roll, and he's a really athletic kid that can play edge. And I imagine they're going to move some fronts and do some things because that's what Clemson did. And especially if you don't just have like the monsters that like a Georgia or Texas does, you got to do that a little bit anyway. But let's see how creative they get with the second and third level blitzes. That's what I'm curious about. Are they going to be able to install a ton of their stuff? Again, this is why college football is the most entertaining sport on earth. There's so much uncertainty that's entertaining. It's not just that we don't know, but it could be great. But he's got a challenge ahead of him because everybody's installing all their schemes for special teams offense too. So that's the fun part of it. West Virginia is going to be a fun watch.
they're on record in saying they want to be the most aggressive defense in the conference. That's what they want to be. Zach Holly runs a ton of blitzes. That's what they do. Rich Rod, he said the one thing they don't want to do here is sit on their heels. They want to force the action, and that does work. If you can, you look at like what a Heacock has done at Iowa State or something like that, that 3-3-5 that forces the action. The Alley runs a little bit different style of a 3-stack defense, but it still works, and it's been very successful. They did it well at Oklahoma last year. So we're excited to see it, Brian. I appreciate you for coming on. I don't know if we ever got to the answer of whether he'll win a national championship at West Virginia or not. I think we'll find that out soon, within the next 3 to 5 years for sure. The window's not huge for Rich Rod at 62. So he's a young 62, in my opinion. Really, he is. So we'll see.
He's got a lot of vibrant personality left in him.
He does. Tell everybody what you're doing and where you're at, man, because obviously you're on X too. We've spoken there.
Yeah, sure. I am the Portal Podcast. We are 7 days a week, just like Mountaineer Paul. There's some kind of podcast coming up. Recruiting, NIL, transfer portal. I do a lot of stuff just on who's committed, and like literally the next couple of weeks to early July, you're going to see 20 to 40 guys a day commit just P4. That doesn't even count like Sunbelt and all that stuff. So I'm going to cover all that to the best of my ability, talk about the kids that are committing, why, official visit previews, you name it. The Portal Podcast. Check it out.
Incredible work you're doing over there, man. And I've definitely checked out the work. It's extensive. You dive deep. It's not just cookie cutter. So if you want somebody who's watching the tape, the best of his ability on all these players, guys, this is the place you go. As you guys know, I'm a big advocate of tape. We watch tape on this show almost every day, as long as I can get it without getting copyright struck. I watch a lot of JUCO stuff and different things from players we get because, that's not copyright. So we get a chance to watch some of the players that we get, and I enjoy breaking them down. Would love to have your expertise on the show someday, maybe when we do that. So, guys,
Absolutely.
Make sure you check Brian out over on the portal. Actually, I have something to read that'll tell you to do that as well. Thank you for making Locked On West Virginia and the Locked On Portal your first listen. But if you could, make Brian Smith, who's sitting right here, your second listen. He has the latest on the rumors, portal entries, and signings. And you can be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape today. You got to find the portal on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't do it yesterday. Do it the day before yesterday. Brian Smith is where you want to be. And I want to thank to everybody over on X, those of you on TikTok, and also here on YouTube. A few hundred people at this time of the day will take it. Brian, thanks for coming on, man. It's been really fun.
Yeah, appreciate it. Look forward to doing it again.
We got one fan asking you a question here. Do you have any thoughts on Jaheim White?
I mean,
the running back of West Virginia. Yeah,
right. He can fly.
Yeah.
I mean, my question is very similar to what it would be for any other running back like him. How much can he handle between the tackles, short yardage? Is that going to beat him? Because if he gets out in space, he's a rabbit. Nobody wants to catch him. Who's going to be their short yardage back? Is it going to be like, are they going to run two back stuff? Or are they going to, Rich Rod's creative, but how they use White on third and short is going to be fast. I think they'll still run speed sweeps, speed option, revert, do some different things, but you need a power back to it. He's always had one in some way, shape, or form. And plus, you had guys like Pat White too. That certainly helps.
Really tough yardage kid. Yeah.
Yeah. So if they can supplement him with another guy that's 6'200", more of a traditional back, West Virginia could run for 250 a game. It wouldn't surprise me.
Brian Smith, man, he knows what he's doing, what he's talking about. We'll talk to you guys later. I'm going to be doing a show on the Phil Steele magazine here in just about an hour or so. West Virginia picked dead last from Phil Steele. I've got some words for Phil Steele. We'll cover that next, guys. Stick around in about an hour, and I'll see you then. Thank you so much, Brian, for coming on, and we'll see you guys on the next one. We're out.